In today's episode, we're going to take a Wyse 5010 thin client, new old stock that I purchased from eBay for only $35. We're going to take a quick look inside of the unit, show you how to change the SSD, how to upgrade that, and we're going to show you how useful it can be as a Linux server. We're going to turn it into a Pixie server where we can boot, have a menu just like you see here, where we can boot utilities, even different operating systems to any client on the network. So we're going to turn it into that, and this is going to be used for my next series of videos. We'll show you how to install Slackware, how to set up Grub properly on Slackware. And so stick around. I hope you find this series interesting. Put away your USB sticks because you're probably not going to need them anymore.
Component TV is here, and it may make the set you're watching now as obsolete as an old hi-fi. Welcome.
And if you would, take the time to like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. It helps grow the channel. And if you're into home fixes, plumbing, fixing your snowblower, your lawnmower, even making bread, you can check out my Frankie Fix YouTube channel. It's doing very well. I hope to see you there. Okay, so we have our Wyse 5010 here. And basically you have, when you remove this cover, we'll put it back on here. There's going to be 3 screws here. And that's going to remove your top cover. And then you're going to have this metal cover inside here. And here you're going to have 1 screw here, 1 here, 1 here. You'll see them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws there. Very tiny, easy to take off. You slide this back. We open it up. Now there is a speaker wire you want to be aware of right here, so that just don't yank it off here. And you could just kind of see the inside here. You have a fanless design here. It's just the air. It's just cooled by the ambient air. You have your SSD right here. And you'll see it's a Pacer. They make the SSDs for these. You have your memory right here. This is a 2 gigabyte PC3 12800 CL11. And basically what we're going to do is just take this SSD out of here. So there's your SSD. And we have our Patriot SSD that we opened up that we bought from Amazon. It was fairly cheap. And it is a little bit longer. You can see the size difference here. But it does work. What I like to do first is just take a little tape here because it is going to kind of touch this card here, which has your USB connections here. And I'm just going to put some tape to just avoid any shorting. So I'll put my strip of tape there. And then I'll put in my SSD, and it is going to be at a little bit of an angle, but it's not going to hurt anything. We have it all inserted in there. We're going to put this cover back on. And you just put this front side underneath in the front. And then push it in. And I'm not going to put the screws back in yet. I'm just going to, for sake of hurrying up here. So that's your Dell Wyse 5010. We'll just look in the back real quick. You have a DVI, and it does come with a adapter for VGA. We've got the 2 USB ports here. Unfortunately, I don't think they are USB 3.0. We have a gigabit Ethernet and 19 volt power adapter here. Now this does have a display port, but I do have a display port to HDMI adapter that I use in there. And so that's it. So I'm going to plug it back in, and we're going to put the USB in there, and we're going to boot into Slackware and begin the setup. And first we want to go up to Slackware's website. Now Slackware's been around since the dawn of time, I think the 90s, and I started with it in the 90s, so I've been with it for a long time, although I've used other distributions. A lot of people like Slackware for it just stays true to the Unix philosophy, you know. It uses the initd system, and if you don't understand what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. We're just going to download this, and it's fairly easy to install. It's not going to be the graphical installation you get from newer distributions, but this is an OG. It's been around, like I said, for a very long time. It's proven. It's very solid. It just came out with a new release. Was it 3 or 4 years ago, which is Slackware 15, which is what we're using here. And what you want to do is go into Get Slack here, and we're going to go to one of the mirrors here, and you want to go to the Slackware ISO images, and you're going to come up with the directory listing here, and we want to get the Slackware 6415.
Well, that's friggin' awesome.
And I've already gotten that, and I've already have it on a USB stick. So all you have to do is use like a Balena etcher. We'll go in here. You can load your Balena etcher like this, and basically flash from your file and find the Slackware ISO that you had downloaded, and then select your target, which is going to be your USB stick, and then hit flash, and then you're going to end up with a nice flashed image that you can boot from. So we're going to go back over here, and you can see the Wyse 5010 in all of its eBay glory, and this was brand new right out of the box, which was nice. If you can get them new, I would recommend that, because it comes with the keyboard, you get the mouse, the mount for the bottom. You know it's never been used. The box was sealed, and I think it was $35 for this unit, and I have a couple of them, including a 5060, and they're well worth the money. I've been running a Linux server for months, a PXE server, web server, for my home lab here, and it's worked out very well. I mean, it does everything for me. So what we're going to do here, just to get started, is I'm going to insert my USB, and you can see I have the USB hooked up in the front. Now this one's a different kind. It uses cards, and you can see my card in there. I like it because it's kind of like using floppy disks. I have several of these memory cards, and whatever I want to boot, I just stick it in there, just like a disk drive. So I have the Slackware image in there. We're all set to boot from it, but first we have to go into the system BIOS on this Wyse 5010 and make sure that the boot settings are set properly. So I'm going to go ahead and fire that up right now. And I'm going to just keep hitting the delete key continuously. And I'm going to come to a password prompt here, and on these thin clients, on basically all of them, it's Fireport, capital F. So we put Fireport in there. And we're going to come to our BIOS here, and we're going to go over to the Advanced tab here, and we're going to make sure boot from USB is enabled. We don't even really need wireless LAN. It doesn't even have it. Let's go over here to boot, and we'll make sure our USB is first in the boot order. Now if it isn't, you can go down and select it, and then hit Shift and plus, and it'll move that item to the top. But we don't want that. We want the USB. So we'll hit Shift and plus, move that up to the top. We'll go ahead and move over to Exit, and we'll select Exit, saving the changes. And we should come into a setup procedure here for Slackware. Now the reason I'm doing this video too is because I see a lot of videos where people are trying to install Grub and it's not working. So I'm going to show you a little trick on how to do it very simply, without all the complicated commands that you have to type to get Grub working. So we're going to go into Slackware 15 huge kernel, and it's going to load the initRD, of course. There's two files with Linux that it needs, is the VM Linux and the initRD, which is basically the basic compressed file with a basic file system that has the commands you need to kind of get the setup going. We're just going to press enter here, and with Slackware you just want to log in as root here. So we log in as root, and we have to set up our SSD now. I've already set it up, so when I load this up you're going to see some partitions in there, so don't pay attention to me removing them. Typically if you have a brand new hard drive there's not going to be any partitions on it. So we're going to run cf disk, and you'll see here we have some partitions here, and we're just going to redo them. So I'm just going to delete them. Again, don't pay attention to what I'm doing here. I'm just deleting, because when I make videos I like to do them and make sure that things work. I don't want to put out false information or claim that everything's so easy to do like a lot of YouTubers do. It's not easy. You have to do it precisely, and that's what I'm going to try to do here for you. So here we are. We got to create a new partition now. We need 3 partitions. We need one, which is an EFI, which is where our bootloader is going to go. Eventually Grub is going to plant itself in there. We need a swap partition, is what Linux uses, you know, to kind of manage the memory. It'll swap out certain things, and it's kind of resourceful and productive when it comes to memory and performance. And then we need the Linux file system partition, where all of our files and our directory structure is going to go. So first I'm going to do is create an EFI, so I'm going to press enter on here, and I'm going to go ahead and give it, I'll say like 400 megabytes. So now we have our 400 megabyte partition, but you can see the type there. It says Linux file system, and we don't want that. We want EFI. So we go over here to the right to type, and we'll go up on this little menu here, and we'll click on, or not click, we're not clicking anything yet, but we will eventually. We're going to press enter on the EFI partition, so we have that defined. Now we have to do our swap space, so we might as well do that now. And our swap, we can maybe go with, I don't know, we'll go with 4 gigabytes. So we go with 4 gigabytes. Now it leaves us 115, almost 116 gigabytes left. And we're going to create a new one here as well. And we'll just use the remaining space, so we'll press enter. Now we have to go up to this type also and change it to swap. So we're going to go to type, and we'll pick Linux swap here. And then the last one is going to be Linux file system, so that's perfectly fine. Now the next thing we want to do is write the partition table out. And we just go over to the right here. We'll select write, we'll press enter. We'll type in yes here. And so we've written our structure out here. So this is how it's going to be. Linux has everything it needs now. We just need to install some things on those partitions. So we're going to quit here. And then we're going to run setup. And it's going to automatically scan the partitions. And one thing I like to do first is set up the swap partition. So we're going to add that. And it automatically detects that it's the Linux swap partition, which is SDA2. We're going to click, oh, not click. Why do I keep saying clicking? We're not clicking, we're pressing enter here. We'll be clicking later when we run X Windows. So Slackware setup will now prepare your system swap space. You can do a check on it, but I'm not really going to bother now for sake of time for my demonstration here. So I'm going to just press enter on no. And then it's detected. It's going to tell me that it's added to my FS tab. That's fine. Just press enter. And now it's going to want a partition for me to install my Linux on. And that's going to be the SDA3. So I'm going to press, not press, I'm going to hit enter here. I'm going to go ahead and format it. And extended 4 is fine. So just press enter here. And it enters that information to FS tab 2, and that's fine. And it's detected an EFI partition, and we're going to just press enter here. And now we're installing from a USB stick, so we're going to press enter here. And we have made sure it's on there because we booted from it, so we're good there. Now we're going to go through here, and basically everything here I'm going to want except for the games. So I'm just hitting the space bar, and that'll select and deselect an option there. But I want the desktop environment, I want the X windows, I want everything here. So I'm just going to press OK here, press enter, and I'll just do the recommended install everything. So this is going to install here, and it's going to take a little bit of time. It really depends on your machine. This is a Wyse 5010. It doesn't have much memory. It's got a decent hard drive space, but it is an older system, so we're just going to let this go, and I'll be back when we're ready to continue. So we're continuing to install packages. It's basically going from A to Z, and that's one of the reasons I like Slackware, is it comes with everything you need to have a web server, NFS server, and in this case I'm preparing this system to show you guys in future videos how we can create a network boot server where we can install a bunch of Linux operating systems on this server, which will eventually become, and we'll be able to boot different things from it on many different computers that you have around the house or wherever your home lab is. So we're continuing to install things here, and like I said, stick around because in this video I'm going to show you a simple way, because I see a lot of people trying to install this Slackware 15 and they're getting problems with Grub. You know, they go to, when the setup is complete, they run the Grub and they're getting errors. So I'm going to show you an easy way to get around that and hopefully enlighten you so it's easier for you when you install it. So we'll let this continue, and I'll be back when it's finished. Okay, so I missed the previous screen where it asks you to make a USB stick. You don't have to do that, just skip it. And here is the critical part, is where we're going to select what bootloader we want, or our system isn't going to boot. So I want to use Grub. Unfortunately, in Slackware 15 install there isn't a Grub option on this menu here. So we're going to go ahead and skip. Lilo is a Linux loader. You would use that for BIOS-based systems only, and eLilo does work, but a lot of people like to use Grub, so we're going to use that. We're going to skip the installation of Lilo, and we're going to proceed to the eLilo. Now when we do that, we have an option to install eLilo, and we don't want to do that obviously, so we're going to skip it and do not install eLilo. So at this point we have no bootloader, so if we reboot right now, it's not going to come to anything. We're not going to reboot. So I'm just going to select the defaults here. Yes, I'll configure my network. I'm going to put in a domain name. It doesn't really matter here. I'll use the same name with a .com at the end. We'll press enter, and it's telling us about VLANs. We don't have any, so we're not worried about that. We'll just select no there. And now for me, I like to use static IPs on all my servers and things so I can keep track of them. I don't want IPs changing on me, so I'll do a static IP, but you can also use a DHCP, which will grab it from your DHCP server, whether it's probably going to be on your router. So I'm going to do static IP, and I'll just enter an IP here. I'm going to go ahead and enter the gateway, which is 192.168.1.1. and that's typically the address of your router. And we're not using IPv6, so we'll just enter on OK there, and we'll do a name server. And we're just going to use Google name servers, 8.8.8.8, or you can type in your service provider's DNS here. And we're looking over the settings. They look good to me, so I'm going to press enter on accept. And so my configuration is complete, and now there's a couple more things we have to pick here. And I don't need the Apple Talk, so I'm just cursoring down and selecting the packages that I think I'll need, and I'll probably use the DHCP server. We're going to use that for our PXE booting configuration. We don't need an email server. That's what that would be. We don't need that. We do need the web server because we're going to be serving files from HTTP for PXE booting, PXE booting. So we're going to do that. We'll do the BSD initd or inetd daemon. We'll do that. dbus, that's important. You want to have that. We don't need a database server. We want to connect with NFS, Network File System. We want to have that available to other clients so we can mount directories from this server on clients. So we'll do that. Let's see what else we have here. We've got the mail server. I really don't need that. I'm not really doing a mail server. We want the Samba because that's going to allow us to set up shares between our Windows 11 or whatever with our Linux. It makes it a lot easier to copy files over, so we'll do that. I'm hitting the space bar just to select things here. The SASL's always good to have. It's authentication. We'll use that. And I think that's going to do it for what we want here. So I'm going to press enter here. And I'm not concerned about custom screen fonts right now. We can always adjust that later. So I'll just hit enter here for no. And our hardware clock, we'll do local time. And then I'll just pick Eastern time here. And for the editor, I'm probably going to use Nano anyway, so I'm not really worried about this. You can install that. I think it's already installed by default, or Pico's installed, so I'll just hit enter here. And here's our graphical environments. Now I'll use XFCE, and it's amazing to see since the 90s they still have Window Maker there, which is a classic. But we'll go with XFCE right now. And it's going to tell me that there's no password set on my account, and I'll go ahead and set it. And it's updated it successfully. Now here's where we run into situations where we're not going to be able to boot. Even though the configuration is telling us we can reboot our system, it's really not a good idea for us right now. We don't have a bootloader set up. We want to set up Grub. So the trick here is just to hit enter here, and we're going to exit the Linux Slackware setup, and don't unplug your USB here. I think that's where a lot of the people run into confusion, is they're just following directions. They're following what it's telling you to do. And it says here that you should remove your media, your USB stick you booted from. We're not going to do that here because we need it again, and I'll show you the trick here. And when you install this Slackware 15, you're not going to have the issues that I see online with booting problems. So I'm going to just hit enter here. And I'm not going to do reboot or power off. I'm going to go into the shell, and I'll just show you an example. If I try to run Grub, what's going to happen here, because we're really running on the initRD from the setup, and that's the basic directory structure with basic things in it. We don't have our full install available to us. Now we can use a chroot command and enter several commands to mount our partitions to the mount directory, but there's an easier way here. And I'm just going to give you an example. I'm going to type in, because we want to generate the Grub configuration, and we want to set up Grub. Now Grub needs to be installed, and then the other important component is the grub.config file, grub.cfg. And if that doesn't exist, you're going to have issues as well. But for the sake of the tutorial here, we're going to try to just grub install. So I'm going to, if I can type correctly, I'm going to do grub install. And then remember the partition that you have the EFI on. Now for me it's SDA1. So I'm going to do the grub install SDA1. Now you can see here it's giving me a mod info error. It's not going to run. It's a disaster. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the USB that we already have plugged in. We're going to reboot this system, and I'll show you an alternative way. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do a reboot. Now we're not going to unplug the USB installation media. We're going to leave that in there, and our BIOS is already set, so we don't have to worry about that. So we should come to the USB boot menu just as we did when we started the setup. So I'm going to do the reboot. We're going to wait for it, and it should boot up back into the USB boot menu. So we're back at the Grub menu that is actually installed on the USB stick. This is not the Grub that is installed on our actual working Linux, because we don't have one yet. So we're going to go to Detect Boot Any Installed Operating System right here. It's the third option. We're going to go ahead and do that. And now we're going to pick, it's detected a bunch of operating systems here, which is nice, or partitions. And it looks a little confusing, but we're going to pick the first option here. And what that should actually do is boot us into our installed system that we just set up. So we're going to let that do its thing and get to a prompt here. We can log in. And so our login is going to be what we had created. That's how we know we're in our actual system now. Now we have to set up the grub install. So we're just going to type in the same thing we typed before, but only this time it's actually going to work. And remember, it's SDA1, that's mine. You want to pay attention to what your EFI is set up on, whatever device that you set it up on when you ran the initial CF disk. So you can see it's installing for the x86, and that's good. No errors reported. Now we're not good here. I want to show you what can happen if we just do this and we skip the grub make config option. So I'm going to reboot here. And this time I will unplug the USB while it's booting. We don't need the boot media anymore. Now you can see here we're getting a prompt. Now this is a common issue. It's actually a bad thing and it's a good thing. It's a good thing because we know that Grub is working. It's actually booted, it booted up, but it's missing something. It needs the grub.cfg file to load the kernel. That's what tells it to load the kernel, the initRD. Those are the two main files important in Linux. And it doesn't know where they are because we didn't configure we didn't do the make config on it. So we have no grub.config. That's basically what this means. So we have to do things manually here. So there's two commands that we need to do, and one is called Linux. And we're basically going to point Linux is basically a directive to tell it this is where the kernel is. So we're going to do boot VM Linux. And you can see there it didn't complain, so we've pointed it to there. Now we have to tell it where the initRD file is. So it's in the same directory there. It's in the boot directory. And so now all we do is we type, we've told it already where the kernel is, VM Linux, and we've also told it where the initRD file is, where all the directories are. And now we're just going to type boot. Now it doesn't have a video mode yet, so it says it's booting in blind mode, so you're not going to see that initial boot screen. But you'll see here it's going to continue to load. And this is actually the one that we installed. We can go ahead and log in again. So we're logged in, so we know we're missing the grub.config, so we have to create that because that's a step that we missed before. So how we do that is we do grub mkconfig, and we do a -o, and that's very important. If you missed a -o, it's just not going to work. You have to have the -o in there. And we're putting in the file name, which is grub.config, and it expects to see it in the boot grub directory. So we're going to run this command here. And you can see it's generating the configuration. It's picking up the VM Linux files I have in there and setting up a menu for me. So I'm good here. I think we're going to reboot. And let's see what we get. Alright, so as you can see we have a menu here. And this is our actual menu that we generated there. And I'm just going to hit enter here. Okay, so as you can see, it's booted up. We no longer need the dependency of the USB drive. We've set Grub up. It booted just fine. We're going to log in here. And we can see we have all of our directories here. We'll try to ping an external server. We're pinging Yahoo. That works great. We can even try to run startx, which is how from back in the day we would run X Windows. It wouldn't just come up automatically like in a lot of today's distributions. So we'll do a startx, and here we have XFCE loading. You can look at the applications that are in here, and I thought I deselected games, but these are probably games for X. That's fine. We can go here, and we have our terminal. We have some applications here. We have some system stuff here. We can go ahead and load the system monitor and take a look at the resources. Very nice indeed. So you can see here we have very low utilization on the processor. Our disk is looking good there. We have our memory usage here. So that's what I like about these thin clients is they're very low wattage. They don't take much power. So if you're concerned about energy consumption, you can definitely get one of these units. They're cheap and they use very little power. So if you want to experiment with Linux, do some programming, it's the best way to go here. So we're looking good here. We're closer and closer to setting up our network boot server where we're going to be playing with many different Linux variants, booting over the network. Alright, so I hope the video was informative in installing Slackware. Very solid Linux distribution. The Dell Wyse has been solid for me so far. Like I said, I currently run a server 24 hours a day using the Dell Wyse 5010, which originally was just designed to be a thin client. We've turned it around into a useful server. So in my series that's coming up, I'm going to be showing you more things we're going to do with the server. And one of those things is going to be the PXE boot server like I mentioned in the beginning of the video. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Goodbye.